Age, obviously disappointing, even more so after having the ability to watch, rewatch the game now, I guess about 3 times now, and kicking myself over a couple things. But it's early, and all of the errors are correctable ones, and we just have to execute a lot better down a stretch of games to put a team like that away. We just left the door open way too many times.
What stood out in the film?
Just our lack of offensive awareness. We got up as much as 13 and had multiple chances to kind of push the lead to 17 or 19. And either took an ill-advised shot in the middle of the shot clock without exploring inside, or had a careless turnover. And you just can't do that against a good team because, again, they've been there before. They got older guys who aren't going to be, you got to win. You got to put them away. They aren't just going to go away on their own. So that was probably the most egregious. And then, like we talked about last night, you got to make your free throws. You make your free throws, you win the game. But credit to them, they made some plays down the stretch.
How has the team responded? You haven't had practice today, but how they
We're
responded?
about to go. I think the guys felt the same disappointment. They've set some pretty substantial goals for themselves, and obviously last night did nothing to stop us from achieving any of them. But it also gives you a sense of awareness of how quickly things can go against you. And so I think they had a players only meeting, and I hope that means that they're ready to address whatever they felt like illness last night.
Now you play Oakland, a team you lost to last year. They run a funky defense. It's just how do you get them mentally reset to go on the road?
Yeah, the good thing is we have multiple guys who played in that game last year, and just haven't seen it now gives them a little bit of confidence. We showed some film from last year's game, and even then we talked about it as a staff, and may have mentioned even last night that game last night had a very similar feel to the one against Oakland last year, where we had a lead in the second half and kind of offense stalled out on us, and the other team gained some momentum, and ultimately theirs was a foul on a three-point shot to give them the lead, and last night they made a three-point shot. So just got to work at it for a couple days here. We've like I said, we wanted to address the skill part in the recruiting piece, and it was good to see C5 make some shots last night. Hopefully that momentum from his confidence carries over. Got to get John Michael to be a little bit more ball secure, if you will, and more confident, and then continue to get Bryce Thompson rebounding the way he has so far, and that'll go a long way to have a chance to be successful up there.
We haven't talked signing day stuff yet. Just kind of what are your overall thoughts on the class you brought in?
Yeah, I feel really good. I always talk about it's the thing that gives you a chance to build consistent success, is having consistent success in the recruiting side. And the group itself is a pretty balanced group. You got a playmaker who can play on and off the ball in Jamira, and got a guy who can make shots, but is more than just a shooter. Pretty athletic kid in Connor. And you got two forwards that are pretty different. Justin's more of a playmaking forward, can really play off the bounce, can pass, and then BG is more of a paint player. And I think one of the things that people admire about him when he gets here is that he can really pass. It's one of the things he does well that maybe a lot of people don't know. And so a class of guys that really complement each other well, and certainly look forward to developing those guys as they get here.
For BG, when's the first time you kind of saw him, and when did you know that he was going to be a Division I player?
So I guess I saw BG during his sophomore year. The year they won a state championship, and was it sophomore year? Maybe it was freshman year. Maybe it was freshman year, actually. They won a state championship that year, and then I think it was the COVID year the next year, and then last year they lost in the state tournament right before they went to the finals, maybe the Memorial. But I remember seeing him as a young guy, just gangly, a little more developed physically than the Boones at that same age. But certainly had a little bit more basketball skill, and I thought, long term, if he continued to grow, which he has, I think he was probably about 6'8" at the time, he'd have a chance to be a guy who could come in and have an impact here early.
How much did the USA basketball stuff help getting him here?
That's a good question. It's probably a better one for him. We had done a lot of work up until that point. I'm not gonna in any way say it hurt us. Having a chance to spend time, and it wasn't that I was talking about Oklahoma State all the time. It was more that he knew who I was and having an opportunity to be coached, by me being a part of that staff and maybe showing how I could help develop his game and just really getting to know each other a little bit more personally because of so much time together. I think it was 3.5 weeks or so, something like that, starting in Houston before we went to Mexico, and then obviously enjoying some success. It's something that we both talked about since then.
Connor, you kind of came out of nowhere seemingly. How long had you been watching him, and then when you pulled the trigger, I guess what was that whole situation like?
So we've been watching Connor for a while, and he's a kid that just kept getting better, and I think it's pretty well been reported on. We had recruited another kid in a similar position from the state. Didn't go the way it seemed to have been going, but the opportunity to continue to see Connor was partly because he was also playing with BG and some other guys that we were recruiting from the AAU program, and so I just kept watching, and every time I'd watch him, he'd make more just kind of unseen winning plays. He knows how to space the floor. He knows how to cut. He gets his feet set and ready to shoot very well. He's kind of a mix between Lindy and Thomas in some ways. Thomas was not the athlete by any means. Lindy's a pretty good athlete. Both of them would say they shoot it better, but he shoots it well, and he's a good athlete. And he's a kid that I really believe is going to become a really, really good big piece of what we're doing moving forward.
Those two, I think they're the first two that you've taken from Team Griffin. Is there any significance in that you've now got that bridge built with that program?
I don't know. I don't know that there was a fracture at any point, to be honest, that I knew of. Obviously we've been recruiting those guys for a while, and BG has only always played for Griffin, so I think there's always been a decent relationship with those guys. I don't know Blake that well personally. I've met him, but I've gotten to know Taylor pretty well, and he's been very supportive of us recruiting those guys out of their program.
Justin, he at one point was really highly rated in his class. Obviously went out, then came back to Texas. What have you just kind of made of his process?
Yeah, it's he's kind of a pretty unique story in the sense that it doesn't happen often where a kid is highly rated and then the evaluators reassess their evaluation. Kind of, you put a guy up there, especially as high as he was, and you just kind of go with your own bias a little bit even when you see him. But I think him dropping in the rankings actually helped him because it gave him a sense of he's got a lot more work to do, and that the rankings don't really mean a whole lot unless you keep getting better, especially early on. And he's really taken a hold of that. He got injured. He recovered from his injury. He has really worked on his body. And again, I watched him this summer. He's another one. I was just like, man, this kid just constantly making winning plays. And got a chance to watch those guys run all the way to the championship game at the Peach Invitational this summer, and he was a big part of it.
And Jamiron, in talking with him, he seems very mature for a guy. What do you like about him?
He's just got a kind of a calming demeanor. He's got a great athletic body, but he doesn't play like a wild athlete. He's got a pretty good shooting touch, which is always something that we want to continue to have at that spot. And he's a really, really tough defender, and it's something that we've built this program on. And so certainly we hope that he continues that legacy. Those guys will be freshmen, so there'll be some bumps in the road along the way as always. But I think long term, those guys will all have really good careers.
You're always recruiting, but
always.
Is this it for this class? Do you think there's going to be more added to it?
Again, the hard part about that question is so much of it has to do with our current roster and how that's going to shake out. We talked about we got 6 guys, I believe, who either by way of draft entry or graduation could be gone, but also could be back. And so it's a delicate balance in that we don't want to necessarily be asking those guys, hey, what are you doing? Are you coming back? I can recruit this other kid if you're leaving but you got to have your antennas up. We've continued to be aggressive in recruiting this class, and just we always want to be prepared as possible.
Do you prefer, at this point, would it be more transfer portal route if that were to happen?
I don't know. It's hard to say for sure. I mean, the truth is, so much of, again, it's not like we're talking about guys who don't play for us either, like that could leave or come back. I mean, really talking about all the guys that play for us. I mean, Avery has another year. BT could flirt with the draft. Musa could flirt with the draft. Both have 2 years left. KB has another year. John Michael has, those guys. Tyreek has, so it's all the guys who play. And so the team could be very old, or if they all decide to leave, we probably do need to take a look and see if there's some experienced guys out there. If not, then maybe we just kind of hold tight and see what happens with the guys that return.
Did Woody's absence affect the team at all last night? I guess I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
mean,
when you guys found out.
I don't think, Marshall can correct me, I don't think I've ever come in here and made an excuse about a loss. A lot of times the other team outplayed us. But it's a tough situation to deal with. These kids are close, and it happened fairly sudden that his dad passed. And so it certainly had an effect on them. I don't know if it had an effect on the game, but it was certainly hard to know somebody you spend so much time with struggling and grieving the way he had to start Monday night. I mean, almost right after the game. Certainly we're praying for him and hope that he's able to grieve and mourn whatever time he needs. We dealt with this with Musa last year. And so it's like a family member, losing their parent, even though you're not really family, but you feel so close to them that you kind of feel their pain. And so I don't want to make any excuse about the game, but I certainly know that they have him on their minds.
You mentioned you want to give him as much time as possible. Do you anticipate him being back anytime soon?
I don't think he'll be back tomorrow when we leave for Oakland. So I would say doubtful for him for Sunday, unless something changes between now and tomorrow or Sunday morning maybe. And then we'll just kind of see from there. I think they're still working on arrangements and stuff like that. So obviously that takes precedence.
A small sample size, but how do you think Bryce, Avery, and John Michael, when they're all on the court together, how have they meshed?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm kind of kicking myself up over last night is that we actually have played well with the three of them on the court. And John Michael and Avery in particular had stretches in both of our games where they've both been off the court at the same time. And I got to be a little bit more conscious that they're not resting at the same time, because it's maybe coincidental, but it's at least anecdotal at this time that the other team has started a run when both of them have been off the court. So we got to make sure that our sub patterns keep one of them as kind of our primary ball handler, which kind of takes a little bit more pressure off BT, because we can use him in a pinch, but if not necessary, we need to keep one of those other two guys out there so Bryce can do what he does best and go score.
And how do you think just the offense in the half court has been overall, like the past 2 games?
Yeah, it hasn't been terrible. I would give it a C, and particularly in the last probably 4 minutes, maybe longer, of the game yesterday, it was probably closer to a D. And it wasn't that we didn't take shots we could make. We didn't take the best shots that we could get. And I'm talking about trying to explore in the paint, get layups or driving kick threes. We settle for challenge jump shots, kind of in the middle part of the shot clock where we don't need to, and we got to be more conscious of, making the other team work. We were taking challenge jump shots, and they were getting back cuts and layups and wide open threes, and that really flipped the momentum of the game.
You went small at one point last night with Musa and then 4 guards. I forget who they were. Did you like what you saw out of that?
Yeah, it's a unit that we'll use. I mean, I think it was John Michael, Avery, Bryce, and C5. I think
Bryce was low on the free throws. That's what stuck out.
Yeah. So we've worked with that unit. It gives us a lot of scoring potential and some rim protection. And so I like the unit because it gives us the ability to kind of space the floor a little bit, kind of create some ball screen spacing opportunities, maybe get some lobs or some kick out threes.